Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and their professional teams struggle to find great capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy such as the Deferred Sales Trust is the best way to exit your highly appreciated assets tax deferred so you can create, preserve, and grow more wealth. I'm your co-host, Pearson York, filling in for Brett Swarts. In each episode, I'm joined by some of the best business, real estate, and leadership, and just all-around entrepreneurs in the world to share ideas, deal stories, and inspiration. So together we can make complex tax deferral strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. As always, we're streaming on expertcresecrets.com, the Capital Gains Tax Solutions YouTube channel, the Kingdom Luxury Realty YouTube channel, Kingdom Luxury Realty Facebook channel. And I'm excited about our next guest. He has a plethora of knowledge in the financial services, financial planning space, takes a holistic approach over 20 years in running family offices and focusing on dental practices. Tim McNeely. Tim, how are you doing, man?
Pearson, I am so excited to be here with you and everyone else. Doing great today.
Awesome. Well, hey, listen, we talked a little bit about your background before the start of the show, but why don't you go ahead and just give a synopsis of how you got to where you are today, and a little bit about how you got here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking. So, I started my life as a very ordinary financial advisor. Thought it was my job to manage an investment portfolio. And then I met and fell in love with my wife, who just happens to be a dentist. And as a young couple, when we were falling in love, like most young couples, right? You're talking about everything you want to do in life, all your hopes and dreams, and what your life looks like together. But it turns out my wife had another boyfriend while we were dating. It was called her dental practice. And we'd be out to dinner or on date night, right? Imagine all of a sudden the conversation turning from all the fun stuff you want to do to, Tim, I got to hold back my paycheck just so I can make payroll. Or I'm paying too much in taxes. Like how do I pay less? Or that grumpy patient, like I just don't know how to handle them. And it turned out that as that ordinary investment advisor, I had no idea how to solve my wife's challenges. And I found myself in a job I hated, and I couldn't take care of the person I loved the most. I knew something needed to change. And so I really reached out. I hired some of the best consultants in the industry to really learn, like, how do you move the needle for your clients? What are you doing? And I didn't really know what I was getting into at the time, but I started building what would later be called a family office, which we'll talk about here in a moment. But I put together a team of the best individuals, brought them in, and we solved some of those challenges my wife had. And we got back to being on top of the world. But sometimes life can throw you a curveball, something that you're not ready for. And in my wife's case, it was her hands, right? Imagine being a dentist and you can't even hold forceps to do extractions anymore. And that's the position my wife found herself in. And we actually implemented another lesson from the super rich, where we can talk about a little bit here in a moment. And that's called stress testing. We actually, looked at the underlying assumptions of her planning to make sure it was done correctly. And when we did that, we actually found out that something had been set up incorrectly. Her disability policy was set up in a way that the income was fully taxable to her. And here on Capital Gains Tax Solutions, you know how big of a killer taxes are. And so we made a quick change, started paying for that policy in a way that would create tax-free income for her, and we breathed a massive sigh of relief, because that one change gave her the income if she couldn't practice dentistry anymore. And I'll never forget being down in beautiful San Diego Del Mar in California here, but we weren't here for the beaches, the sun, and the sand. We were sitting in the specialist office waiting for him to come in and tell my wife if she had a future in dentistry. Right? Imagine sitting there waiting for a doctor to come in and tell your loved one if they've got a path in their chosen career, if they can practice dentistry anymore. And the reason I won't ever forget that day is it didn't matter what he told us when he walked into the room. We had run the numbers, we had done the planning, we had that team around us, and we knew everything that was going to be okay. And that's what gets me up every single morning, is helping dental professionals, entrepreneurs really be prepared to take advantage of all the different strategies that are out there and be protected when things don't go as planned.
That's awesome. Okay, so there's a ton to unpack there. But before we do, I want to just take you back one more time. I believe everyone has a certain set of spiritual gifts or superpowers or strengths, whatever it is. What are one or two that you have that have allowed you to be as successful as you are today?
I would tell you it's two. It's these things right here. It's my ears. And, this is something that most advisors miss, most people miss. is they don't really listen well. They don't spend time doing discovery. They don't really dive deep to figure out what's important. What does the person across the table want? What's the most important thing for them? And how can I help them get it? And that's my superpower, is knowing my clients, figuring out what's important to them and helping them learn that, and then doing everything in my power to help them get it.
That's awesome. So active listening, being able to understand, and not only that, but empathize with your clients in order to figure out what they truly want, or probably more importantly, what they truly need, and how to convey that in a way to make it sound as attractive to them as possible so they actually take action.
Exactly.
Awesome. So in your story here, you unpacked a whole bunch of different things. I want to kind of focus in on something though that you said, was that you started to develop a team around you. Dive into that a little bit, and how has that impacted your business and your guys' lives as a whole?
Yeah, no, that's made more difference than just about anything else I've done. It is having that top-notch team, and it really is. There's a differentiation between, at least in my world, the different advisors out there, and kind of that base level. It's an investment advisor, and they're going to be focused on a singular area of your life, like your investments. That's what they focus on. And as you kind of move up the hierarchy, you may be working with a financial advisor, and they may be, responsive to your request. If you say, "Hey, I want some help in this area," they'll go, "Great, I can refer someone." And that's about as proactive as they're going to be, is they'll be responsive to your request. But then as you move up, you'll be working with possibly a wealth manager. And now they're going to be very proactive and actually bringing to you solutions that you never even thought about. And then by the time you reach the highest level, you're going to probably have a virtual family office around you, which is what the super rich do. And the super rich, they've got very complicated financial lives. And that's why they put together a team of the best individuals. And the job of that team is to manage that family's wealth. And the primary reason they do that is they want to work with professionals who really understand them, who know what's important to them. And that's, what goes into a good team is, are you working with people who don't just refer back and forth, but are they actually collaborating on your behalf? Are they actually working together to find solutions? Do they really understand what you're attempting to achieve? Or are they just trying to wow you with technical wizardry? It's like, what kind of team do you have in place? And that makes the biggest difference, especially as your wealth continues to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really like how you said they were in tiers, and because that's a really interesting way to think about it, right? Like for example, I have a financial advisor that I set up an IRA account or whatever, right? And but they were limited in what they could do, right? They couldn't do a self-directed IRA account, so I had to go and find a new one. And so, what do you say to somebody who's been with, let's say, a CPA or a financial advisor that's at tier one, and they've made that jump in the CPA or the financial advisor or the estate planner, right? I don't want to say isn't qualified to go there, right? But it's just they're in a different tier now, right? Like, how do you as a like a financial advisor or a professional, either jump into the tier to bring that client up with you, right, which is what probably the really good ones do, or right, how do you as the client realize, hey, you know what, I've kind of like outgrown my current situation, now it's time to upgrade? How do you get them to realize that, number one, and then number two, like, act on it?
Yeah, so I'm really big on just doing self-assessments, right? If you've ever done any coaching, if you've ever worked with any mastermind groups, like just self-assessment and really discovering, where you are for yourself is such a powerful thing. And one of the things I'll do is I'll take clients or potential clients through just a really basic framework where we're looking at 9 different elements of the professionals you work with, and we're just going to ask you to rank yourself. Like where do your professionals fall? Are they really doing discovery? Do they really know you well? What kind of capabilities do they have? Are they working with the best of the best? Do they have preferential arrangements where you can jump the line if you need to work with another professional? And then what kind of process do they have? Is it haphazard or is it methodical, right? And so we kind of start with that assessment. And if you do that assessment, it'll be abundantly clear what kind of team you have. You may do the assessment and be like, yeah, I've got all the great people. Everything's fine. Everything's working. or it may not. Or if you just want the simplest way to do this, ask yourself, how's my team working out for me?
Yeah.
Like just ask, like, are you happy with the results you're getting?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically it's just really self-assessing and figuring out, okay, hey, am I where I want to be, right? Am I like in the CPA's case, right? Am I paying too much in tax, right? And is there a better way to do this?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you brought up the example of, the financial advisor doing the IRA. Maybe for someone listening, that's all you require. Is like you just need some really good investment advice on like how to invest your funds. And that's going to be fine for you. But if you're high net worth, if you've got multiple properties, multiple entities, and you've got, 3 or 4 different financial advisors and a CPA, and maybe all these things have never been looked at cohesively, that could be a sign that it's time to really start diving in and saying, where am I? Am I getting the results I want?
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So if you guys are not in those, and, if you guys are above those tiers, right, do a real self-assessment if you're not where you want to be, right, and take a look, because your team could probably be enhanced at that point. And it's not a, it's, I feel like there's a little bit of like, I don't want to say taboo around that subject, right? Like, how do you've built a relationship with this person, right, who can't take you to where you want to go next? Like, how do you have that conversation of just like, okay, like it's time to move on now and go from there?
Yeah. Well, right, and it's scary to move on, right? Because you've built those relationships, you've worked with professionals, right? They know you, but sometimes, right? And one of the strategies the super rich use, and we talk about it in Becoming Seriously Wealthy, which is a book I'm happy to give to anyone. There, you can go to my site and pay shipping, get it for free, or if you just email me, I'll send it to you with no shipping. But we talk about this concept called stress testing, and like Ronald Reagan, our president, used to say, trust but verify. And that's what stress testing is you're looking at the underlying assumptions of your plans and how they all fit together. Are they actually delivering what you think they're going to deliver? And a lot of times we find out they're not. And through this process, the professionals you're working with, it may just be as simple as going back to them and making a little tweak. And so, for example, let's say you've got a great insurance person you're working with, and you do the stress test, and you start looking at, your insurance coverage. You may find out your umbrella policy is too low, right? You may have $5 million of coverage when you really need $10 million of coverage. That's a simple tweak. You can go back to your existing provider and just change that if you like them. And so, sometimes upgrading the team is literally just making a couple tweaks with the people who are already there. Or you may find out, you know what, this professional really doesn't have the technical expertise to serve me well. But you don't know until you get into that discovery process, which is why I said my most important superpower is just asking questions and getting to know what's important to someone.
Yeah, absolutely. So in your family office, your family office is just your strategic alliances that you've kind of created. Do you that you bring to all of your clients? How are you doing this?
Yeah, great question. And so, a full family office. So, if you've sold your company $500 million or more, you've got a team of full time people doing this for you. And that's great, but you need a $3 or $4 million payroll a year just to run that family office. The beauty of the virtual family office is you can bring in people on an as needed basis. And what I've done is I've gone out into the community, I've sourced some of the top talent, and I've vetted these professionals, right? I've done extensive interviews with them, I've worked with them, and I know they're capable of delivering good results. And so what we'll do is we'll bring in the specialist on an as needed basis. And so if the client says, hey, I'm really struggling with the tax piece, and I'm looking for some other things to do, we'll bring in that tax attorney to figure out what to do. Or maybe we want to do that insurance review. We'll bring in the insurance person and look at what their coverages look like. And so we're really able to bring in those professionals on an as needed basis. And it's not just in the financial world either. That's the beauty of this virtual family office is I've got top tier medical professionals and concierge doctors. We've got private aviation specialists, exotic car brokers, right? Whatever you may require, chances are I've got that vetted team member who I can bring to you so that you don't have to keep them on payroll all the time.
That's awesome. So your strategic alliances, right, that you have built and vetted over the years, developed relationships with your network, right? You're bringing those as value add services to your clients on top of it. And then you guys also are communicating so that you create this cohesive plan in order that everyone is on the same page.
Exactly. Because it's one thing to say, hey, I know someone, let me refer you out, go talk to them, they'll take care of you. And then nothing happens after that. There's no
Right.
communication between the professionals. But the truth is, your financial life, everyone's financial life is so connected. What you do in one area impacts another. And that's why you want that collaboration, not just a referral back and forth.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. So you focus mainly on dentists. Obviously, you have a very strong emotional why behind that, right? And you want to make sure that people are, or they're protected, right, in case something happens like you guys went through. You mentioned something pretty interesting since this is a tax deferral podcast. Uh, you mentioned that your wife was going to have to pay tax on the disability benefit that was coming in, but then you figured out a way not to. So can you dive into that for a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is kind of another differentiator between professionals, too. A lot of professionals out there are what I call pretenders. And a pretender, they're a well-meaning advisors. They absolutely have your best interest at heart. They want to take care of you, they want to serve you, but they just don't know what they don't know. They don't have the technical expertise to really help you the way they want to. And in this case, this was a person who sold my wife a disability policy when she first got out of school. And he had this bright idea because he heard it somewhere. He says, why don't you pay for your disability policy through your business? That way you can write the policy off. And at first glance, that seems like a really good idea. Why wouldn't you want to take a tax deduction for your disability policy? Well, the problem is if you've written the policy off through your business, if you ever collect on the policy, that income is fully taxable to you. So at the point you're actually going to require the income the most, they're going to be taking taxes from it. So that turned out to be a really bad idea from a well meaning advisor who just didn't have the technical expertise to serve my wife well. And that was one of the things we caught during stress testing. And we see those things pop up all the time where a well meaning advisor, has suggested things or put things in place, but they're just not operating correctly. They've never been updated. Or, for example, maybe you did some estate planning and then you did some insurance planning and then you did some investment planning and then you did some business succession planning, but you've never looked at all these things cohesively to really see how they fit together, to see if there's opportunities for improvement, reducing cost structure, or actually improving the outcomes for you.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point too, right? So you have when you start, and I'm starting to see this a lot more. At least I am, right? And maybe it's just like the kind of caliber or quality of people that we're having on the show that we're interviewing, but I'm seeing a lot more of this idea of a holistic wealth management approach as opposed to I only do wealth management, I only do insurance, I only do whatever it is, right? And it's a lot more of this like, okay, everything in your entire, um, your entire, portfolio, your entire wealth, we need to take a look at everything and really see where we can fit everything together, because one thing will definitely affect another thing, right? Like, do you want a Roth IRA or do you want a traditional IRA? Well, I mean, I don't know. It depends on each individual's situation, right? So how have you basically taken that approach um, to the holistic view of everyone's financial situation, and how are you applying that and making sure that things are copacetic between everything?
Yeah, great question. And what's interesting is you're right. Everyone talks about this holistic planning. They talk about doing all these things, and in becoming seriously wealthy, we've actually got data on what advisors know versus what advisors actually implement for clients. And the data couldn't be more clear. When we talk to advisors and we ask them, do you know about a lot of strategies that are out there? Do you know about, for example, defined benefit plans or captive insurance companies or private place and life insurance, right? A lot of advisor hands go up and say, oh, yeah, I know all about that. But then we dive in and we ask a simple question. Have you ever done one of these for one single client? And all of a sudden, those numbers drop to the single digits. So there's a massive disconnect between what advisors talk about versus what advisors actually implement and do for clients. And it really comes down to the fact that most advisors don't have the network of true professionals who know how to implement these strategies. So, massive disconnect between what's being talked about and what's actually being implemented.
That's very interesting because, yeah, and maybe it's just kind of like becoming buzzword now where people are catching on to this idea that they can no longer just focus on like one area of someone's financial picture. And if you do, you're kind of like now out in the, out in the waves or whatever. And that's kind of like what we're doing over here at Capital Gains Tax Solutions, right? We are like one little piece in the tax deferral and estate planning area, but we have a network of people that are exponentially smarter than I am, right?
Yep.
Like just above and beyond the like as far as brains and everything, their knowledge, their technical skill or whatever. I'm like a nurse in this whole like situation, right? Like I'm checking people in and that's it. Like that's as far as I get, right? And then we're setting them up with all these different people who are, a lot like yourself, right? Who have technical expertise in one area, specialize in one area, right? And then we bring it around to the next one, and it's like a Rubik's cube here, where we have like this piece and this piece, and everyone we're trying to look at everyone's financial situation and match up all the colors and whatnot. So that's a definitely an interesting concept because I have heard a lot of people talking about this, and it's interesting to hear that they're not necessarily doing it, at least according to the data.
Yeah, right. So, if you ask 10 different wealth managers to define wealth management, you'll probably get about 15 or 16 different answers. But all of them are going to really center around that investment consulting piece. They'll talk a lot about asset allocation. They may mention holistic financial planning and talk about that. But the data is really clear. When it comes to wealth managers, 100% of them do the investment advising, right? Every single wealth manager does the investment advising piece. But when it comes to advanced planning, and I define advanced planning as wealth enhancement, which is tax mitigation strategies. It's wealth protection, making sure everything you've worked so hard for isn't unjustly taken, either by lawsuit, divorce, or some other unjust means. It's charitable gifting and having an impact on the causes that you're passionate about. And then wealth transfer, which is getting money and assets to the next generation. When we ask advisors, are you proactively doing advanced planning? Are you proactively doing those four things? That number drops from 100% that are doing investment consulting to 6.8% of advisors
Wow.
are proactively doing advanced planning. Gets a lot of lip service. Very few people do it.
Interesting. Okay, so in that whole, advanced planning, wealth strategy, you mentioned taxes. How are you guys handling the tax deferral, the capital gains tax when people liquidate either an asset or a business, succession planning, estate planning? How are you guys handling the estate tax and the 1031 tax deferral strategies? What's your biggest frustration with the 1031 right now?
You know what? When it comes to that, I mean, some of the strategies we're using is, we're big fans of setting up your own insurance company, something called a captive insurance company where you pay premiums to yourself. And when you go to sell your business, there's risk in that transaction, right? You're selling the business. There's a risk associated to it. And it turns out you can actually buy an insurance policy to help mitigate that risk. Well, if you can pay the premium to yourself, that's a great thing to do. And so that's one of the strategies we do is we actually are able to reduce the capital gains from the year of the sale by buying a big insurance policy to protect against anything going sideways. That's one of the strategies. Another big strategy we use is trying to take as much money off the table, get them into qualified retirement plans, or even the charitable piece and looking at different trust structures, different ways to lower the business of the value, freeze the business, get it to the next generation. And then, of course, there's Deferred Sales Trust that work really well too.
Yeah, absolutely. The Deferred Sales Trust is our kind of bread and butter. Obviously, we'll do a 1031, right, if it makes sense. We're finding that right now it's hard in the market to 1031, with the time constraints and with the like kind and all that kind of stuff. And you know about that.
Which I would tell you that is the biggest frustration of 1031s right now. It's what do you go into?
Right. Yeah, that's the hardest part for sure. And they give you 45 days to, get engaged and 180 days to get married, so
exactly.
it's just it's
with
really
a
rough.
very small pool of choices.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but you mentioned something interesting that I and we're kind of running out of time, so I want to be kind of quick about this. But uh, being your own life insurance,
Yeah.
explain that.
Not life insurance. This is more for risks that aren't necessarily covered by your traditional insurance policies. So, for example, you're running a business, you've got business interruption risk, you've got brand reputation risk. I don't know if any of your listeners remember or you remember, there was a dentist who went hunting in Africa and shot a lion, right? Cecil the lion. He came back. People weren't so happy he shot that lion. His dental practice literally disintegrated overnight. That's a brand reputation risk. There's business interruption. There's officers and employment liability. There's all these different risks that you face in your business. Well, what about if you could set up your own insurance company, write premiums to yourself, manage those funds, and then down the road take a tax-free loan from your insurance company? Massively beneficial.
That's interesting. I just heard another guest on our podcast uh, earlier today told me you could buy life insurance, like from people that are about to
Oh
die.
yeah, yeah.
You can,
Viatical settlements. You can buy policies. Yeah, there's
yeah.
all sorts of different things that can be done.
So those are some interesting ideas. So this strategy is you basically set up an insurance company to basically against certain risks that aren't covered, like like
Brand
brand.
reputation,
Yeah.
supply chain interruption. If you're a dentist, you can put a dental warranty program in there if you've got to retreat, your patients at some point. And you're going to write premiums to your own insurance company. You'll pay claims because if you're not paying claims, it's not a legitimate insurance company. So you will pay claims. That's exactly what you want to do. They're regulated. They you got to follow the rules. You don't want to abuse them, but used well, they're a great strategy.
Interesting. Interesting. That's a unique one. I have not heard that today either. Today's been a wealth of knowledge for me. I got schooled today for sure. It's been great. So is this all in your book?
Yeah, this is all in Becoming Seriously Wealthy. We talk about captive insurance companies, we talk about defined benefit plans, private placement life insurance, a whole bunch of different things that can be done.
Cool. And you guys can get a copy of that by emailing Tim at lifestoneco.com. That's Tim, Tim, at lifestone, lifestone, co.com. He said he'd send you one for free. Or go to lifestoneco.com and you can do the free plus shipping deal and get a copy that way. But it won't be signed. I'm just kidding.
Exactly.
I'm just kidding. Okay, well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I do have one more question for you before we get into the lightning round, and that is, what is the best piece of advice you've ever heard?
I think the best piece of advice goes back to Ronald Reagan: trust but verify, right? You're working with advisors, you're working with people. Make sure your plans are going to deliver what you actually think they're going to deliver.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, you ready to get into the lightning round?
Let's do it.
Cool. All right. So, what is your favorite book?
Oh, favorite book right now I'm reading is called Falling Upward by Richard Rohr. It's a spiritual journey, just talking about how you build the first half of life and then how you really excel in the second half of life.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your favorite leadership quote?
Favorite leadership quote: "Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right," by Henry Ford.
Yeah, that's a great one. What are you most curious about right now?
What I'm most it's going to get weird, but so I'm a very religious man, a Christian man, love the scriptures, love the Bible, and I've been reading a lot by an author named Michael Heiser that dives into the spiritual realm that our Western minds just don't see in the scriptures. Right? We approach the scripture very Western. We miss all the spiritual stuff that's in it, and so really having my eyes opened to the spiritual aspect of the ancient Near Eastern culture, amazing, mind blowing.
Interesting. I'll have to dive into that. And what was the name of that book again?
Michael Heiser, and it's called The Divine Counsel.
Michael Heiser, The Divine Counsel.
Yeah, fantastic stuff.
Absolutely. Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, Tim, any parting words?
You know what? I would tell you, go back, right? If you want the quickest win you can get, something so easy to do, like just go back to your team of advisors and start sharing what's important to you, and then ask them how they're helping you achieve this. Right? Like that's the quickest, easiest win you can get. the next time you're talking to your CPA or your wealth manager or insurance or whoever it is, just say, hey, this is really what's important to me. How are you helping me achieve this? You do that and you'll start instantly knowing if you're with the right people or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And if you guys are interested at all in learning more about different capital gains tax solutions, you can find us at capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. Tim, we also have a mastermind every Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. I actually already invited you. So you're there, but it's awesome. Come learn. We have a bunch of people who ask questions. You would be a super valuable asset to that discussion. That's every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, and you can find that at capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. And don't forget to go get a copy of Becoming Seriously Wealthy by Tim at tim@lifestoneco.com. Email tim@lifestoneco.com. Anything else?
No, that's it. So this was a pleasure being here. Happy to share with you, and want to help your audience achieve even more than they ever thought was possible.
Absolutely. Tim McNeely, everybody. And thanks again for listening to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where, as always, we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy, such as the Deferred Sales Trust, life insurance. What'd you call that? Life insurance?
Captive insurance.
Captive insurance
company.
All these other awesome strategies are the best way to create, preserve, and grow your wealth. Guys, please rate, review, and subscribe. And thanks again for listening. We'll catch you on the next one. See ya.